Hey guys, welcome to the channel again. In this video I'm gonna show you how we can process XML files. So in a previous video we saw the creation of XML files. We were able to create an XML file, and we were also able to observe the location, manipulate it, and when we press the XML file we were able to see the file under our project, and we can also edit the content outside the program and see what it is, what information lies inside the file itself. Now we need to manipulate this file so we can add data or change existing data and finally delete data. So we'll treat this specific file as the persistency in our XML in our C# applications. But in order to do that, we will use a specific framework called LINQ that you can use with basically with anything, not necessarily with XML file, but basically it is a framework that you can also use for databases. Now let's read first what LINQ does. LINQ Language Integrated Query is a general purpose querying capability that is built into the Visual Studio. So we now know that this is something that is built inside Visual Studio, and you can use it for manipulating and showing data. And it is also supported by .NET Framework. LINQ enables programmers to work with both in-memory data, such as collection, which means data that runs during the runtime, or external data, such as databases and or XML files, using a uniform syntax. So basically LINQ is not only used on XML files, you can use it on a JSON file, you can use it on databases as well. In this course we will use LINQ to process XML data. LINQ has a specific element called XElement, which allows the manipulation of data quite easily. So all you need to import is using system XML link to your program, which then allows you to use the component called XElement, and using the XElement you can, for example, manipulate the data inside the XML file, show the content, or even do much more than that. And that is what we're going to do in this exercise. So what I'm going to do in here, I'm just going to copy and paste another button and change its properties. So I'm going to come in there. Instead of create XML, I'm going to say show XML file. And underneath, the button name will be button show XML. Now going back to the form design, we can see the button itself. So there's the create XML, and now there is the show XML. All we have to do now is to somehow apply LINQ into our program so that it can show the data properly. To do that, we're gonna use what we call as XElement, not XML, XElement. So make sure that this is XElement. Now to use XElement, we need to import the necessary statement. You can do so by pressing Alt Enter, and you can see the suggestion on the list, which is using system XML link. If you just click on that one, you will observe now that the compiler recognizes XElement, because now in your program there is the statement up there, the import statement using XML link. Because XElement is part of the LINQ library, you need to import this statement at the top for the compiler to recognize this specific statement. For the XElement, we're going to put our file. Because our file basically shows students, I'm going to name the XElement name as students and load the content of the file itself inside this element. So I now know the file location, which is under that specific statement. So you can simply copy paste that statement into the XElement load section. Using that one now, your file resides in there. You can show now specific elements should you want to, such as nodes inside an element, or you can show directly the content of the data. Let's start with the easy part where we can show the content of the data, the entire data itself, the entire file. So I'm going to say message box dot show, and all you have to do now is to type the name of the X element, in this case students, and convert it to the string. Now by doing so, you can basically show the entire component of data, the entire structure, whatever written inside your XML file can be displayed. So to run this, we're going to go into debug and run. We already created the file, we know that it's in the directory, it's there, and now I'm going to press on show, and it will show me the entire data. So student list, student name, surname, and no name, surname, they are all there displayed. This is how you show an XML data should you want to. Now you can manipulate certain components inside the data itself, such as if you want to just show the names of the people, you can do so. You don't have to show the entire component, but you can show a specific part as well. To do that, you can use, for example, a for loop. All you have to do now is you can type a for each loop, and you can look up what we call as nodes inside the data. A node is basically the information inside your tags. So whatever you type inside the tags as well, such as to, Mark, Oliver, they can be regarded as nodes. So each node inside my students elements, I'm going to say elements inside student, because the student specific element has more than one element, and I want to take the element's name. So I'm going to go in there, type elements, and type name. Presumably I am trying to show the data inside the student, that is student name. Now our data, I need to check that this is student, which is already written down there, but it's actually student name. So it's best if I change this to student name, otherwise it wouldn't understand what I'm trying to do. And now you can come in there and show the message box and convert it into string. So we can say message box dot show, we can type the node itself and convert it to string. This will allow you to show the specific node that is inside the student name now. So let's just try the solution. So we're gonna see first the file itself, then we're gonna see student name and the other student name as well. So it shows us the student names only. As you can see in here, under the elements, we can see only the student names. You can combine this into a specific variable should you want to. All you have to do is to come here, names of students, and instead of directly showing this, we can make a comment here and say that names of students is actually plus equals to, each time you can leave a \n and then add the node string data. Once you have done this, it will be added on the top of it each time this is created. It's also a nice practice to leave this empty at first so that it will be added on the top. And now that you have added the components themselves, you can come in there, write a message box, and then type the name of students inside. So it will show all students at once. Rather than showing them one by one, the student names will be displayed all at once. So student name this person, student name that person. So as you can see, you can manipulate the data itself. You can show whatever you want to show, or you can show the XML document as you like. You can play around with this notes selection for student elements and under elements, so you can reach to a deeper level or maybe an upper level to show whatever information you would like to display. And this is how you can show XML data. So how can we add data? So far we have created the XML file. We also displayed the content, but what about adding data? So I'm going to go into the form itself, and this time I'm going to copy and paste it and put it in there, and just change it to add data to XML file. And coming down there, the button name will be button add XML data. Going back to the form, now I need to manipulate the design a little bit, expand it so that it will match, and since we want our buttons to be of the same size, we can expand the upper ones as well. So what about adding the data? Now the good part about LINQ is you can use only XElement to add new data as well. You can create an element that contains elements so that you can add it. We actually did something like this when we wanted to show the element inside students. So technically what we're going to do here is that we're going to read the file itself, just as we did in the file content. When we read the file, we wanted to load the file itself, and what we're going to do in here is that after the loading process, we're going to create an XElement and add more data on it. So I'm going to go to the design part, double click on add data to XML. It will take me to the function. So first thing I do is to load the file. So I'm going to create doc and X document. Using X document, I'm going to load the file. I know by now I know the directory of the file itself. You can simply use this statement, XElement load. You can also use XElement students should you want to. It doesn't matter at this point if you want to name it as an XElement or as a doc file. I'm just gonna leave it as doc because I wouldn't do any more operations on this one like I did in here, but I'm not gonna do any more operations, just I'm gonna regard it as a document file. So once you have loaded this one, we're gonna create a new element. So I'm gonna call the new element as the new element, and we're gonna create new X element. Once this is created, we're gonna put the data that we want to basically add to the form itself. Now if we investigate the data inside the XML file, we have a student, we have student number, name and surname. So these three data should be filled in order to add a new item, a new student to the list. So what I'm gonna do is here that I'm gonna add everything under students. So I'm gonna put student here, and every other element that I add should be under this component. So I'm gonna say new student, so new X element. Now the component that I want to add is basically the ID first, which is the student number. So I'm gonna put student number, and if we go up to the list, we will see that the number that comes next after 1, 2, this should be 3. So you can simply put student number there and comma 3, and that will be done. So I'm going to put next element, which is the name. So we're going to put a new one in here, student name, and I'm gonna put a name here like John, which is gonna be my entry, and I'm gonna put another one that will be the surname, and let's call this Brown. Now because this is my last component, I will no longer put comma in here, and instead I'm gonna close the bracket that I created for the component itself, and I'm gonna make sure that this is added properly inside my form. So by doing so, when we create the X element, we set that it will be added under student, and we have a new element student number, we have another new element student name, and we have a final element called student surname. And once you have done this, we're gonna save all of this inside our file. So we're gonna add the element, under student list. Our student should be added under student list. So you can simply copy paste this should you want to. Put the quotation mark and add new element. Just add, not new element, it's just add, and we're gonna add the element itself. So I'm gonna call it new element. Now coming in there, I'm just gonna save this. Make sure that it's saved inside the file itself, or otherwise it will add this, but it will not actually save the file. So we'll just copy paste the pathway here and save to the file. As for the last feature, we can show a message box to the user so that they will know the XML file has been added with a new content now. So XML file, let's call it new data. New data is added to the XML file. So just to show you how we can run this, we can build up the solution first, see if we have any syntax errors, and it seems like we don't. And I'm going to run this, and we can see the file content that we have one component and two, Mark Oliver and me. So I'm going to press on this and it shows the names, and I'm going to add new data. Whoops, we have an error here, so we need to fix up that one. It says the object reference not set to an instance of an object. Let's fix that up. Doc element, student list, add new element. This should be X document load. It shouldn't be X element load. It should be X document load. Let me just fix that. X document load. Not sure why I type X element there, because that's not an element, it's just a document. I'm trying to add the document. So it should be okay now. Let's try it again. So add to XML file, and it says new data is added to the XML file. Pressing OK. Now I want to see the data itself, and actually now you can see 1, 2, and a third component is being added. So John or Brown, which was the person we added, is added to the list. And if you actually press OK again, you can see now that John's name is also added to the list. So you can see that the data can be added to the XML component. So that's how we add the new data. We can see now that new components can be added to the XML file. so far we have done the show part, where we can see a certain component, or we can see the names of the people, for example, a specific element inside our XML file. We had also seen how we can add new data into our XML file. So this is kind of like a pattern. So each time we want to manipulate the data, the first thing we do is to load the document using XDocument. Now whatever change you want to add or remove, you have to do it using XElements or items, and once you have done it, we will update the XML file. So we will say doc save to the file and finally show it. So let's continue. I'm gonna add more stuff into this. So copy and paste. And this time around, I'm gonna put delete data from XML file. And going down, button delete from XML. So we can come in there and maximize this to make sure that this is visible, and set up the others so that it will match with the size. So we created, we showed, we add data. Now we need to delete data. So how do we do this? Like I said, first thing you do is to make sure that the document is loaded. So I'm going to copy paste this to make sure that the document is loaded. Now once you have loaded the document itself, you can define a certain unique feature in the document itself, so that you can delete based on this feature. So if you go up and look at the XML file, our unique feature is actually student number. A student can have the same name and the surname with another person, but if these are different people, they should have different student numbers. So this kind of identifying column of a specific field is called the primary key. So you always do the delete process and also the update process based on the primary key, based on the unique identifier of a specific entry. In our example, the unique identifier we have is the student number. So we need to make sure that it will actually do all operations, all delete and update operations based on the student number. So we're gonna come down here and make sure to define a delete ID. So I'm gonna call it a delete number. And this number would be, let's say we want to delete the chart entry, the one that I just added, which is the John or Brown entry, this one. So because this one has the 3 student number, 3 as the student number, I just type student number 3 here to make sure to delete this part. So I'm gonna call it in here, and we're gonna call a specific component here called descendants. Descendants allows you to basically jump into that specific tag, so you can manipulate the data. So it allows you to check up the value of a specific node underneath the tags. So it will jump into student task tag in here, inside the student tag, find a specific entry which will be student number, and compare the node inside this with the node that we have. Our one is called delete number, so we're gonna compare it with the student descendant. So I'm gonna say dot where which is gonna be the value that I'm gonna compare. I'm gonna put X, the X element, Before that, I need to make sure that this is a string value. So I'm just going to put a string here. And the X element will be the student number. Student number. And this will be should be, not will be, but should be initialized to delete number in the example. So in here you can see that the component should be initialized to whatever you have, and we hopefully will be able to remove this. So we're going to say dot remove. This should be descendant. Should it be not? It should be descendant. And as you can see, it fixes up the error. And all we have to do now is to make sure that the save is done and we can show the message. So I'm going to come in there and save it and say that delete data is complete. So we can go now, build the solution and see how this is going to work. So we can see the XML data, we can see that nodes 1, 2 and 3 exist, and we can see the people in there. So whenever I press on delete data, it says delete data is completed, and if we go back to XML, you will see that the node now, which was John Brown, is now not in your list, and if you press on OK, you will not be able to see this person anymore. So this is where I'm going to stop with this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.